4 hours before the missiles landed, something moved that had no reason to move, yet not a price, not a headline, not a rumor on a trading floor. Institutional positions, large coordinated bets that markets would stay calm, began to vanish quietly at scale, in a window so narrow that if you were not watching the right data feed at the right moment, you would have missed it entirely. The VIX spiked. That is the market's fear index, the number that tells you how much professional money is paying to protect itself against sudden collapse. It moved before a single wire service had confirmed anything, before any press conference, before any official statement, and while that was happening, you were probably watching something else. Most people were. The retail market was still buying the dip, still treating that morning like a normal morning, still unaware that the floor they were standing on was being removed from underneath them while they watched. So here's the question this video is built around. Was what happened on March 14th a military event or a capital reallocation dressed in the uniform of war? I know what the answer looks like, but if I give it to you now, before you have seen the sequence, before you have seen the timing and the numbers and the positions, it will sound like a theory. It is not a theory, it is a record, and the record has to come first. This is Marcus Vane Geo-Financial Layer, March 2026, March 14th, 2:15 a.m., Kharg Island. The infrastructure that handles the majority of Iran's oil export capacity is gone. U.S. forces confirmed. In a single hour, 1.5 million barrels of daily supply are erased from the global to energy ledger, not disrupted, not delayed, deleted. The official explanation arrived on schedule. National security, deterrence, proportional response to Iranian aggression. The language was measured. The press conference was orderly. But here is what the press conference did not explain. 15,000 targets struck in 14 days. That is not deterrence. Deterrence is a signal. That number is a demolition. And now go back to those large, coordinated bets that nothing dramatic was coming, the kind of bets that pay out only if the market stays quiet, that vanish 4 hours before the first missile. The VIX, the market's fear index, moved before the wires. The professionals were already out before the world knew there was anything to be afraid of. That exit was not a reaction to the news. It was confirmation that the news was already known by someone in a position that the exit made profitable. 1.5 million barrels is only the opening deletion, and the question is where the floor ends, and nobody in that press conference was going to tell you that, think about a highway, a global one. Every product you buy, every tank of fuel you fill, every piece of food on the shelf, it travels this highway. Now imagine that overnight, the main bridge caught fire. There is no other route, and someone has just put a new toll booth at the only remaining crossing, that is the war premium, the global benchmark price for oil, the number that sets energy costs everywhere, which traders call Brent Crude breaches $100. It does not pause. It moves toward 120. That number is not a market reaction. It is a surcharge added to every transaction in the global economy, automatically, regardless of whether the person paying it had any vote in the events that created it. And understand what kind of pressure this is. This is not inflation the way central banks are trained to handle, the kind that comes from printing money, from excess demand, from economies running too hot. This is deletion. Supply was physically removed. The price floor was permanently raised by the act of removal. The tools every central bank has, the interest rate decisions, the balance sheet adjustments, the forward guidance were designed for a different kind of problem. They are now in a defensive crouch, trying to manage a pressure they were not built to absorb. You are already paying the surcharge, you just do not have the invoice yet. Now step back from the price screen. Step back from the press conferences and the military briefings and the official statements about deterrence and national security. Ask who, in the middle of all of this, is getting paid. Since the escalation began, Russia has been earning 6 billion euros in additional fossil fuel revenue every 14 days. 6 billion every 2 weeks. Stay with that number, because every barrel destroyed in the Middle East is a barrel the world now has to buy somewhere else at the new floor price in a market with less supply and more fear. Russian intelligence has been confirmed, providing real-time targeting data from satellites to Iranian proxy forces. the precise coordinates that turn a strike from approximate into surgical. And I want to be precise about what confirmed means. Here, this is not an inference from the pattern, this is documented. The data trail is public. The architect is not watching this war from a distance. The architect is the eyes in orbit that make it profitable to keep burning. The disruption funds the position. The position requires more disruption to sustain its value. The mechanism is self-funding, and the question of who ends it and when is not military. It is financial, and that answer has not arrived yet. On March 19th, Pete Hegseth announced what he called the no-quarter doctrine, a total destruction of Iranian export capacity. Hegseth did not issue a warning or set a deadline. He announced a policy. The USS Tripoli was repositioned, 2,500 Marines deployed. The language from the podium was deterrence. The financial result was something different. The military mission and the financial mission are not two separate operations. One is visible, the other is in the ledger. Every target destroyed is supply that does not return to the market. Every missile fired is a unit of scarcity permanently added to the price floor. Every missile the instrument fires increases the value of the architect's oil reserves, not as a side effect, as a mathematical certainty. The more supply is eliminated, the higher the floor, the larger the windfall. The instrument does not need to know this for it to be true. You are no longer watching this from the outside. Come down from the trading floors, leave the military briefings, stand at a gas station in Frankfurt. Diesel is at €2.15 per liter. That is a 20% surge in 72 hours. Not a monthly creep, not an annual adjustment, to 72 hours. Now stand at a grocery store in Sao Paulo. The wholesale price of fertilizer, the chemical that determines how much food gets grown next season, has jumped 12%. That number will not show up on your receipt today. It will show up in May in the price of bread, in the price of rice, in the gap between what you earned last month and what the same basket of food costs this month. The price of bread in May is being set by missiles in March. Sit with that. This is not an institutional loss absorbed by a balance sheet somewhere. This is the war premium arriving at the only place it was always going, your table, and the option to opt out does not exist. And you did not vote on the no-quarter doctrine. The invoice arrived anyway. The fertilizer wave has not landed yet. That is the second bill. It is already in transit. Now go back further. Before the first missile, before the first press conference, before the first official statement about deterrence and proportional response, the Aramco Strategic Analysis Unit, the internal forecasting division of the world's largest oil producer, published a formal warning. If the Strait of Hormuz faced active military contestation for more than 10 days, the result would be a market catastrophe, a breach of the $100 floor, a permanent structural shift in global energy pricing. That warning was on the record, distributed, documented. We are on day 14. Let that land. The warning was not acted on. The no-quarter timeline proceeded without adjustment. The $100 floor has now been breached exactly as predicted, with the precision for the analysis projected. That record exists. You can find it. There is a payment system called mBridge, built by China in cooperation with the Gulf states to route energy payments between countries without touching the US dollar. Two countries completing a transaction directly in their own currencies. No dollar required, no dollar fee, no dollar leverage. Quietly operational, growing positioned as the infrastructure for a new way of completing transactions between countries without touching the US dollar. Its primary energy suppliers are the Gulf states. Its primary consumers include European nations. Those two groups are now on opposite sides of an active conflict. China cannot maintain a neutral payment system when the oil flowing through it is being bombed by one of its trading partners, military allies. The 6 billion euros Russia is collecting every 2 weeks, that capital is moving through the same digital infrastructure, widening the cracks. Every transaction that routes through mBridge under these conditions tests the system's claim to its neutrality. A neutral bridge cannot survive a hot war between the parties it connects. When mBridge fractures, the world does not return to something stable. It returns to a system where the dollar is the only way countries can actually complete a transaction with each other. A dollar that has already been demonstrated repeatedly to be a weapon as much as a currency, or it fractures into something with no unified architecture at all, into blocks, into friction, into a cost of doing business that does not go back down. Neither of those options lowers your cost of living, and the choice between them is not yours to make. The 4-hour lead was not the beginning. It was the confirmation. The positions were built before the policy was announced. The policy produced the conditions and the positions required. The destruction of Iranian supply was not a consequence of the conflict. It was the objective, and the result, a permanent high-margin floor for energy, held by those who are already positioned for it, is not a side effect of a war. It is the point, and the mechanism that delivered it is still running. The game is still being played. The table just changed shape. Do you think the price floor comes back down, or is cheap energy gone for good? Drop your answer below. I read every single one. This is Marcus Bain, Geo-Financial Layer. I will see you in the next one.